can get started. So thanks everybody for logging on and spending part of your afternoon with us at Orange County Coastkeeper. So my name is Ray Heimstra, and I'm the Associate Director of Programs at Orange County Coastkeeper. And this is our What's Up with Water live stream. So this is part of a series of live streams we're gonna be doing more and more often, so hopefully you'll be learning a lot and tuning in going forward. And today is stormwater. So the focus focuses on stormwater, and give you a little information about that. So I'm going to start off with just what is stormwater. So real simply, stormwater is rain that falls from the sky. So it's fresh, clean water. It's free. Just a gift to us from above that it is a really important component of our entire water system and our habitat and everything on our planet. So it has several significant benefits. So when rain falls in Southern California, our situation is we're in a Mediterranean climate. So we're mostly dry during the summer, and we get about 14 inches of rain during the winter. So our rain generally falls between November and April, and we get about 14 inches of rain on average. So when we get some of that rain, it tends to come down fairly hard, and we get about 3 to 5 storms a year. And when we do get that rain, then it really helps out our habitats and the wildlife and everything else. And Haley, if you want to pull up a photo. So this is an example of what we get. This is from 2018. This was part of the super bloom that happened when we got some really good rains in 2018. So rain is very important, and it's critical to our habitats. It's not only plants, but animals, fish, amphibians, wildlife that depend on watering holes. All of them depend on rain, and it's a super important component. Also, our groundwater depends on rain. So where we're in these wild areas like that, these open areas, the vast majority of that water infiltrates and goes into the ground and eventually gets into our groundwater, where it maintains our streams, rivers, and our groundwater basin that we're able to pump water out of. So that's the good part about stormwater. Stormwater can also be tricky, though. Can also be dangerous. So an example of what can happen when we get a lot of stormwater all at once is from the 1938 flood in Orange County. So this is actually a picture of downtown Buena Park back in 1938. And for those of you that live here in Orange County, you're thinking, well, Buena Park isn't anywhere close to the Santa Ana River. Well, no, it wasn't. But the part of the reason Orange County is called Orange County is because of all the great farmland. And at that time, it was mostly orchards and farmland. And the reason you get all that farmland is generally from being on a floodplain. So what we did is we started building in the floodplain clear back then. And this great flood of 1938 really had some major consequences for our rivers and our streams in this area. So after the 1938 flood, which killed 45 people, we had 5 days of rain. It rained over 8 inches down in the lower areas, up to 30 inches in the San Gabriel Mountains. So water just flowed out and down through these rivers. And it wasn't just Orange County, LA and other areas really got flooded really bad too. So in response to this disaster, the Army Corps of Engineers decided to go ahead and start building, channelizing and building drainage canals throughout our area. So when you look at the Santa Ana River today, we're actually pretty lucky. A good chunk of the Santa Ana River is still somewhat natural, but it's mostly leveed up and has concrete, and it's designed to withstand a 100-year flood. We put in a Prado Dam in the Chino area, and then Seven Oaks Dam up above that more recently, in an effort to be able to control the stormwater and make sure that we don't flood. You have the Army Corps of Engineers does most of the major work on the big rivers and channels, and then you have the Orange County Flood Control District is the one that manages the smaller ones. So together, the federal government and the state and local governments work to manage these flood control structures and ensure that property damage is minimized during floods. So this has had a dual effect. So it's actually really restricted and changed the hydrology of our rivers and streams, and then it's allowed us to build in more densely and more often in areas that are very close to rivers that are still really subject to flooding. So right now the gold standard in flood control is 100-year flood, and that's what we built to. So now we have a developed Orange County that has very highly developed flood control structures. The Santa Ana River is basically straight-jacketed in a lot of areas, and then we have these flood control channels. So what we've been able to do is create outside of those areas a lot of development. It's homes, industries, things like that, and that creates a lot of challenges too. So we have two sources of pollution that end up in our stormwater from these developed areas. So there's non-point source pollution, and that's things like your park, your front lawn, agricultural areas, things like that are called non-point. And we're going to have a great presentation later on about our Smartscape program that's going to talk a lot more about non-point source pollution and what you can do with your personal space to go ahead and help make that better for our water system and for nature. The other is point source. So point source pollution are things like oil refineries, power plants, industrial areas, all those things, those industries that are creating stormwater runoff when it rains, and they are covered under a permit. So this permit is issued under the Clean Water Act. So the Clean Water Act was initiated in 1972 with the goal of making sure that all waters of the U.S. are fishable, swimmable, and drinkable. So to do that, these permits are developed. They're called NPDES permits, National Pollution Discharge Elimination System permits. And they're called for under the Clean Water Act, and they're implemented by the state agencies, our state water boards. So the Clean Water Act is the guiding national legislation, but California has much stricter water quality rules. Luckily, our water quality is cleaner that way, and these NPDES permits help make sure of that. So those NPDES permits, what they require is that companies do testing, monitoring, and implement what are called best management practices to reduce the pollution that's coming off of their sites, and try and keep our water clean. Over time, Coastkeeper has worked to enforce the Clean Water Act by doing investigations of different sectors of industrials. So for instance, we started off by looking at large home developments. We've looked at waste haulers. We've looked at material haulers, material handlers, are the trash haulers. And for each one of those, we've gone out and we've done investigations. In certain cases, we've had to take litigation and do legal action, but we've been able to work to help clean up these industries. Some of them need special consideration. So the metal recyclers facility, we worked with the state water board and the regional water board and the metal recyclers to develop a special permit that they work under. So it gives them a little more latitude on what they're able to do while still helping to keep our waters clean. So what does it mean to keep our waters clean? So the regional water boards create what is called a list of beneficial uses for our waters. So there's actually, if you look at, for instance, like the Santa Ana River or San Diego Creek or some of our larger waterways, they have actual a list of beneficial uses that include things like recreation, which means swimming. It has to be good for fish, for municipal use, for drinking water, for commercial use, for spawning, for wildlife. So there's this long list of beneficial uses, and those are assigned to those waters out there. And if for some reason those waters aren't meeting those beneficial uses, then there's a series of actions that are taken by the regional boards through these NPDES permits, other permits which are called MS4 permits, which are related to the cities and local jurisdictions, and then more specifically to water bodies, what's called TMDLs, a total maximum daily load. And that TMDL is a very specific program for making sure that a water body comes back into compliance. So that's a little bit about permits. So what I want to talk about next are some of the opportunities that we have out here. So do you want to bring up the next graphic? So this is actually a graphic of runoff that comes into our area. So this is something that we take a lot of advantage of in Orange County, and that's called groundwater stormwater infiltration. So what happens is when it rains in our area, the water runs off into our creeks and channels, and then we've got areas where we capture that, and we get that free water, and we put that, and then we're able to infiltrate that into our groundwater for us to pump out later in use. So this is part of the reason why it's really important that we have our stormwater runoff is clean, because we want to capture that and reuse that as much as possible, while making sure that we leave enough water in our rivers and streams for the wildlife that needs that. So for example, in Orange County, the Santa Ana River is designed with a bunch of big side basins, so that when water runs down the Santa Ana River, if for those of you that may live near it or drive by it, it looks like a jigsaw puzzle at the bottom. And what they've done is they've actually built sand berms to try to slow that water down and infiltrate that into the ground. It is also diverted off into infiltration basins off on the side of the river, where it gets infiltrated into the ground for us to use. We get up to 60,000 acre feet a year of water that way through the Santa Ana River. And that's enough water for 120 families for a year. So it's really quite a bit of water. And that's what this graphic is showing, the runoff coming down the mountains through our streams, and then being infiltrated into spreading grounds. And you can also do this in your front yard with a little detention basin or something like that. So that's one of the opportunities. The other thing we can do is we can expand this. So you want to go to the next one? This is a graphic of Prado Dam, and what we're working on at Prado Dam is Prado Dam and Seven Oaks dams are built as strictly as flood control structures, but there's the opportunity to use them to capture stormwater and store that for infiltration later on. So for instance, what Orange County Water District is working on, there's been siltation buildup behind Prado Dam. So to provide extra protection, they've raised Prado Dam up to provide extra protection, but they don't want to, even though they've raised it up, the idea is you don't want to overfill it too much. So what they're working with is the Army Corps of Engineers is to actually remove sediment from behind the dam, so that they're able to store more water during storm events while still providing the same amount of flood protection. And then that we are able to harvest that water, and that's up to 10,000 acre feet per storm of free water that we're getting by capturing this behind Prado Dam. There's also the opportunity potentially to do that behind Seven Oaks Dam. And this is basically free water or super low cost water, because all we're doing is actually maintaining our dam. And to give you an example of why this is so important, from 5 storms, the water that would be captured behind Prado Dam would be the same amount of water that Poseidon is proposing to produce with their desalination plant. And they want to charge $1 billion for that desalination plant for the same amount of water that we could get through stormwater capture behind Prado Dam just in normal years. So expanding our stormwater capture is a really important tool for us, and it's something that we have a lot of opportunity to do. The other thing is called natural treatment systems. Natural treatment systems are in place. A lot of them are in the Irvine area of Orange County and some of the newer areas. And what that is they're in newer development, the water is funneled down to areas that look like a little wetland. And so there's reeds and stuff in there. The water ponds up. It's exposed to sunlight that kills bacteria. The plant material absorbs the nutrients that are there. It also captures and kind of filters out the sediment and the metals. So that's natural treatment. And then the last thing we can do, and this is really happening in a large scale in LA with the LA River, is restoration of our rivers and creeks. And that's where we're actually taking out some of that concrete and removing some of those flood control structures to return natural function to our creeks. So that increases our ability to infiltrate. It gives more opportunity for wildlife. And it also adds to that natural treatment that I talked about, so that we get natural cleaning of our water before it does go out to our ocean. Thanks again to everybody for spending part of your afternoon with me, and have a safe and wonderful rest of your day.